advertising is pretty predictable. It's like, okay, we want to buy the back cover of that magazine. Okay, great. But I want to earn the front cover of that magazine for our clients. That really is the power of PR. It is trusted by the consumer, and it's especially necessary in the cannabis industry where we lack access to most of those mainstream advertising channels.
Hello, and welcome to A Higher Law, a cannabis podcast from the Dykema law firm. I'm Brett Gelbord, a partner located in Dykema's Detroit office, and I'll be your host today. For more episodes, you can find us at dykemapodcast.com, youtube.com/dykemalaw, or by searching A Higher Law wherever you get your podcasts. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a break from discussing the various legal and regulatory issues that impact the cannabis industry, and we're going to turn our focus to another important business consideration for cannabis operators, namely PR. And to help us with that topic today, I am very pleased to introduce none other than Ricardo Baca. Ricardo is a very well respected journalist known for his time at the helm of the Denver Post's groundbreaking Cannabis news column. Ricardo is now the founder and CEO of Grasslands, a journalism minded agency that provides PR services in the cannabis industry. Welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you, Brett. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And I think, as you probably heard from the intro, our podcast usually focuses on legal and regulatory issues, for cannabis operators. But we wanted to have you on to talk about another pretty important business consideration that I think probably sometimes overlaps a little bit with legal issues, and that's PR. So, if you want to take a moment or two to talk about, how you came to found Grasslands and what it is that you feel PR, as a PR firm, you guys can offer to operators in the space.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, of course. My story is pretty straightforward. I went to journalism school and ended up in daily newspapers for 24 years, which was a hell of a ride. And at the end of that whole journey, I found myself being appointed as the cannabis editor at the Denver Post. This is back in 2013, right on the precipice of those first ever recreational sales happening, the
Right.
first in the world. And that was a blast, being the paper of record for legal weed, covering the implementation of the regulated market all over the place. And I did that for about 3.5 years, as you said, through the cannabis, through the Post, had the support from a world-class newsroom. We were a runner-up for a Pulitzer Prize in explanatory journalism in 2015, and that was reporting about cannabis. So yeah, that's kind
Amazing.
of how I found my way in, to very thankfully being positioned in a place where I could learn a lot about this nascent market in the earliest days. And then a couple years into that gig and almost 25 years into my journalism career, I decided to leave and start my own marketing agency. And that is Grasslands. We just turned 7 years old, and we are PR, thought leadership, and marketing. We do that for brands in the cannabis space, natural products, and psychedelics. And so, we're headquartered in Denver, but with colleagues all around the country. We have about 23 full timers right now, and proud to represent some of the biggest brands in cannabis like Cookies and Puffco, and also some small but mighty operators across the B2B and B2C sectors. So that's kind of who we are and how I found myself here. I'm very thankful that the editors at the Denver Post back in the day kind of approached me with that once in a lifetime gig of being a cannabis editor because weed wasn't frankly even in my purview at the time. I don't really smoke anything successfully, and I hadn't yet come across edibles from the regulated market, and so it was such a beautiful, eye-opening experience, and I'm very, very thankful now to be aware of this complicated industry as well as our complicated relationship with drug policy in this country.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, and I love that you weren't even really too involved in cannabis at all before, and just a door opened for you, and you walked through it, and here you are. Congratulations on 7 years with the agency. That's great.
Thanks.
Um, and Yeah, and you mentioned drug policy. That's definitely something that I'd like to maybe touch on a little later in our conversation. But just to kind of get things kicked off, or keep them moving, I think I know from my own experience, and I suspect this is probably the same for a lot of our listeners. We maybe don't have the clearest understanding of exactly what it is that a PR firm does. So if I'm there and I'm kind of busting my back, trying to comply with my regulatory obligations, trying to make the best product that I can make and get it out to my customers, PR might not be something that I think I need, or it might be
Mhm.
something that I think I might only need if there's some sort of crisis situation and I need to kind of clean things up in the media around my brand or something like that. But um, from talking to you, I suspect that there's a lot more to what it is that firms like Grasslands can offer to businesses in the space. So I was wondering if you could just kind of help, walk our listeners through, um, what it is exactly that you guys do.
Of course, yeah. It does help that we've discovered that a lot of people out there just don't understand what public relations really is. You hear PR out and about, but very few folks actually have a concrete understanding of what it is. And it kind of helps to take a step back real quick, a brief education on the media ecosystem. So across any industry, you're looking at this three-tiered ecosystem full of paid media, owned media, and then earned media. And that paid media, pretty straightforward: advertisements, sponsorships to events, etc. Owned media, those are the channels that you own, especially where you own your own messaging, like your website, social media, etc. Consumers are pretty savvy. They know that you can buy that advertisement, and they know that you can say whatever you want to say on your company Instagram or LinkedIn. Then there is earned media, and that's where the value of PR comes in, because public relations is securing that earned media hit. You're earning the media hit, talking with the journalist and the editor, the blogger, and the podcaster to position your clients in front of their target audiences. And the reason why these earned media hits are so valuable is because when you look at decades of research from Gallup and Pew and other trusted pollsters, we look at the American public and they tell us that the most trusted form of media is earned media.
Mm.
Because really, that reporter with the New York Times Magazine or LA Weekly, that when they talk to you, when they write about your product, you're ultimately borrowing from their credibility. They are lending that to you. So that is a huge deal, especially in a modern ecosystem of social media and influencer marketing. Every brand out there is looking for authenticity and trust. And that is really what PR brings. And in the legal cannabis industry, PR serves a double interest, especially because we lack availability to most legal advertising channels, as you know, Brett. So in absence of having a lot of those paid media channels, especially you think about some of the most powerful ones in the world right now, being Google and Meta and Twitter even, and
Right.
most of those channels are still off limits for cannabis brands, and so they need to position themselves in front of the consumer. You're right. It is so immensely challenging, so many barriers to entry to being a legal cannabis operator here 10, 11 years into the regulated market, especially as some of these markets are just getting off the ground. And so I don't blame operators when I'm talking to them and they're like, you know what? We're not really doing anything for marketing. And that's okay at the beginning, but eventually you have to figure it out. Even if you're DIYing it internally, even if you're hiring your nephew to run your social, whatever that looks like, there comes a point in any startup cannabis business in the life cycle where they really have to prioritize marketing and really look at that media ecosystem and say, okay, what are we doing in earned? What are we doing in paid? How are we managing our owned channels? And that is where Grasslands comes in. We love being that strategic partner with our clients, always pushing back and really making sure that they're making the right decisions for themselves. And it's just such a thrilling thing when you think about it. Advertising is pretty predictable. It's like, okay, we want to buy the back cover of that magazine. Okay, great.
Sure.
But I want to earn the front cover of that magazine for our clients, like we have in the last 6 months with Puffco, with AVD, and with ourselves. I love seeing our clients on the cover of magazines, and even coming up this Sunday, we have our client cookies in a massive 3,000 word feature in the New York Times Magazine, which is arguably one of the most respected and trusted and visible journalism outlets out there. And, that really is the power of PR. It is trusted by the consumer. And it's especially necessary in the cannabis industry where we lack access to most of those mainstream advertising channels.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. You want to buy the back page advertisement, but you need to earn the front page cover story. And
Absolutely,
that's a
yes.
that's a really nice shorthand for thinking about how um, a business can benefit from the services of grasslands. Um, and I like that. Actually, I read that piece on cookies. It's very excellent, um, excellent article. Um,
Yeah, the journalist did a fantastic job and was following the brand coast to coast, as you could tell with the reporting taking place in the Bay Area where Cookies was founded, but also
yeah,
where they were just opening a new store in New Jersey.
right, right, right. And so for obviously that's a very high profile, sort of high impact example. Um, but for something like that, are you, is Grasslands sort of liaising with the journalist, or how does that work?
Yeah, with that and most earned media hits, your PR agency like Grasslands, we really are your representative to the media. You think about public relations, you also hear PR called media relations.
Hmm,
So we are really just keeping your brand top of mind in front of the most relevant journalists who are writing for the outlets that actually include your target audiences, right? Because the most strategic marketing is audience first marketing, and that's how we practice it. We're a proactive shop. We're hyper strategic, but we're always thinking about, okay, who is that audience? So, Brett, for example, I know you and I were in Vegas at BizCon a couple months ago, and really appreciated you and your colleagues' support of the Grasslands party there. If we're
100%.
breaking it down, your sponsorship of the Grasslands party very much was a paid media investment to position your brand in front of your target audience, because us both being professional services firms, we oftentimes have the same target audience, and yet we're completely non-competitive. And
Right,
at that Grasslands party, we truly prioritize getting C-suite and decision makers through the door, mostly through operators and licensees, and then also journalists. Those are the two audiences we try to bring together with all of our events. And that is because they are our target audiences. So it's so fun when you're switching back and forth in the course of a day, and sometimes you're working on a single state operator, a small brand out of Michigan, and you know exactly who their audience is. They're looking for those consumers in and around Michigan. And they also want to get in front of those B2B audiences that might wholesale their products. And in the meantime, we're working with law firms and we're working with compliance agencies, and we know who they want to be in front of too. They want those B2B audiences are number one. They want to be in front of investors, number two. And so, really, by practicing that element of audience first thinking, we can position our clients and our partners where they most need to be. That is in the publications and the rooms and the podcasts that their target audiences listen to. So yeah, it has been a trip transitioning from journalism to marketing, but now 7 years in, I'm really digging it. I feel like I've gotten a couple extra MBAs in the last few years of being an entrepreneur, and we just love helping our brands, big and small, make sure that they are reaching their consumers, their target audience via earned media hits.
so you just mentioned something that kind of nicely segues into my next question. The transition from journalism to marketing, but the full name of Grasslands is Grasslands, a journalism minded agency, right? So I'm curious about you know what that means, maybe how that differentiates Grasslands from a more traditional PR firm.
Of course, yeah. I think agencies are a hilarious space when you think about it, right? Professional services in general.
Sure.
And one thing I've always known, especially as a professional working journalist, is that agencies also have a bad rap. They have bad reputations generally. PR professionals are known for stretching the truth and
Mhm.
practicing hyperbole and saying anything at all costs to get that client coverage. So that's really where journalism mindedness comes in. For 24 years, I worked with PR professionals, and I met and worked with many PR professionals who did stretch the truth, who did straight up lie to me just to get their client in the paper or in my column, whatever that might have been. And I just really didn't appreciate that, the unethical nature of that. That really didn't align with my ethos,
Right.
nor did it align with my journalism training. And then those PR professionals got burned on my list, and I would never work with them again. And so this space does have a reputational issue, and it also had real problems. So I wanted to kind of step in only if I could practice this differently. And as I was starting up, I was really thinking, what does different look like? And how can I bring something new to this conversation around public relations in natural products or cannabis? And really, what that is, it can be described in a couple words as journalism mindedness. But when you take a deep dive into that, it really is looking at the tenets of journalism, those elements that you should see in every real news story. I'm not talking capital J journalism when you're reading newspapers and legitimate news gathering organizations, but it is that unbiased perspective. It really is that ability and drive for deadlines. It is a very real passion for clear communication and transparency and partnership. And that partnership is a big one, because if you think about myself as a 24-year long journalist, lots of PR professionals would email me every day, literally hundreds, and oftentimes I felt like they were treating me as if I was a walking ATM machine. They
Mhm.
were treating the relationship as if it was very transactional, which is not okay, because we're all humans, we're all
Right.
professionals, we rely on one another, and it was just really off-putting. Of course, I met a few PR professionals in my day as a journalist who are fantastic at their job. In many cases, we became close friends, but generally, it was a transactional relationship, and I recognized this needed to be practiced differently because I, as a journalist, did not feel valued. And let's face it, modern day journalists already deal with enough shit.
Yeah.
They already don't feel valued by so many members of the American public and everything else happening out there in the ecosystem. So to feel that way from your PR partners really bugged me. And so that's another element of journalism mindedness, is making sure that the journalists know we respect them and we value the work they do immensely, which is why we prioritize inviting them all to all of our events. And it is why we have our own client criteria on our website, which is to say, these are the kinds of brands and organizations that Grasslands will work with. And one of those tenets is we only work with brands that appreciate and value the countless contributions of journalism to today's democracy. And I know that turns some people off, and that's great, dude. If that doesn't align with you, get the hell out of here. You don't
Yeah.
belong at Grasslands. I love it.
Yeah. If that turns you off, yeah, that's a red flag. If that turns you off. But it's funny. I'm hearing what you say about the sort of perception of PR agencies, and there's some overlap there with the way people view lawyers and law firms stretching the
Yeah.
truth and doing things like that. And I think that's why it's important for, I know myself as an attorney, and I can certainly speak for the rest of my partners at Dykema, that we always really do our utmost to hold ourselves to the highest ethical standards. And I think the interesting thing that probably impacts both of us is bringing that into the cannabis space, right? Because it's a space that's operated outside of the law for so long. Now that it's coming kind of into a legalized and regulated space, having professional services firms who are selective in who they're going to work with, so that they can help bring the industry forward, um, in a way that is going to, you know, be amenable to the public accepting it as a new legitimate
Hmm.
industry, and coming out of the shadows, right? If you know if you were just going to take the regular, sort of stereotypical PR spin that you just described of maybe questionable allegiance to the truth, and bring that forward into the cannabis space, I foresee just a raft of problems, because it's going to have a ripple effect in terms of the long term public acceptance of
Yeah.
the industry, right? Same thing with the law firms in the space, right? You know, we have to be especially at the beginning, right? You've got to be very careful to make sure that you're bringing in clients who are making a good faith effort to, you know, run a legal business in compliance with the state and local laws, right? Um, and I guess
100%, Brett. And real quick, this is one of the reasons I've always surrounded myself with attorneys. I think there's a lot of like-mindedness between the professions of being a legal professional and being a journalist. Think about how many other professions are actually considering ethics on a daily basis in 2024. There
right.
aren't that many, but I do think there's a special kinship between attorneys and journalists for that very reason.
You know, cheers to that. um, we mentioned a little bit about drug policy earlier at the top of the conversation, and I feel like we're kind of heading in that direction a little bit right now. And so, I guess I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the role that you know, sort of marketing and PR plays in helping to, you know, maybe guide the hand a little bit, either in state capitals or hopefully eventually sometime in Washington. That would be nice, but yeah.
Well, it's hard to overstate the role that PR and marketing plays in this conversation. One of the things that we are centered in at Grasslands is Aristotle's modes of persuasion. When you think about it, everything in our sphere comes down to persuasion. So we're
Hmm.
constantly reverse engineering our arguments from a perspective of ethos and pathos. Um, and when you think about how we've actually started to see reform in this space in the first place, so much of that is rooted in pathos, that emotional pull, seeing children who were suffering from intractable epilepsy suddenly respond to medicine for the first time in their lives, and that medicine is a plant we've been taught to fear for more than 80 years. That medicine is a non-toxic plant that is still rated among the most dangerous to exist in this country. And that medicine is the subject of one of the greatest smear campaigns in the history of modern marketing. And so after 80 years of prohibition, we really need that marketing, that PR, that storytelling in front of target audiences to change people's minds. And that is how this whole movement's changed, right? You think about Prop 215 in California almost 30 years ago. Dennis Perone and his friends, his community. It was AIDS patients who passed the world's first medical marijuana regime
Right.
out there in California. And I'm so thankful for what they did. And it was real, it was honest. They were finding such tremendous relief with cannabis. And thank goodness they found a semi legal channel to get it, right? And then seeing Colorado, my neck of the woods, my backyard, and my home become such a leader in progressive drug policy reform at that, because not only do we take California's win and then go ahead and become the first state to ever regulate a medical marijuana system, but then we also became the first state to ever vote in recreational and implement that. And of course, we implemented it about 5 6 months before Washington State. And so, the storytelling is really everything. It is how we change people's minds. It is how we persuade. And we know that we're far from over in this conversation too. It does drive me crazy when I'm talking to certain entrepreneurs, and they're like, "Yeah, isn't it great? We can legally operate now." And it's like, yes, it is great. And we have so much farther to go because our policy is broken.
Right.
And this industry is so drastically overregulated. And I'm thrilled to see some of these early initiatives that are starting to peel away those rules, those unnecessary regs.
Hmm.
And part of that is happening because of storytelling. Again, marketing. The best marketing is an integrated approach where you're using one message. It's always the same message across different channels. Again, those channels might be earned, owned, paid, word of mouth, beyond, but you're using that one message. That is strong messaging, strong positioning. And now it's great to see this slight progress as DEA is considering rescheduling with that HHS recommendation. That will create opportunity. That will pull back some of these overly restrictive elements that are making it damn near impossible to succeed and thrive in this industry. And that is where we need to go. But we really can't get there without the storytelling, which is why some of our past clients have brought us in. You look at the launch of the United States Cannabis Council, a fantastic organization. They knew they needed to get the message out, why they were here, what they wanted to do, and they have made tremendous progress alongside one of our other clients, NCIA. You know, they've been there
Mm,
from the beginning
sure.
and have been such a positive force in this conversation. But they also recognize change happens through storytelling, and the way we tell stories to the masses is via public relations. It is through content marketing. It is through thought leadership work. You know, I've given a couple TED Talks. I'll be speaking at South by Southwest again this year. These opportunities to position your narrative in front of a large group of people is everything. You know, when
Yeah.
you're giving that TED Talk, I was just telling a client the other day, we're working on a TED Talk for her. When you're giving that TED Talk, it is very much in that moment about the 500 to 1,000 people who are in that room with you. But you know, a couple weeks later, it's very much about the hundreds of thousands of people, the millions of people who will have access to it on YouTube, because PR
Right.
scales your message so that it can reach a much larger group of people. And yeah, it has been thrilling to see this drug policy reform finally take root. And it's also been immensely frustrating just to see it go so slowly.
Well, it's amazing to think about how much work is being done right now to try and move the needle in that direction. And and what you're working against, just thinking about it while you're talking, is the storytelling from early days of cannabis prohibition, right? Reefer madness, all the scaremongering around these things. That's decades, almost a century ago, and
Hmm.
it still has a grip on the sort of mental, the psyche of the nation. And you're talking about, you're doing TED talks and you're working with your clients, and you're not the only person in the space trying to get the message out. And I mean, you're just bringing a sledgehammers to like a big wall that was built over many decades, and it's amazing to see the work get done, but it's also amazing to just, I think, take a step back and look at how powerful that messaging can be, because you look at what you're trying to defeat, which is these decades of messaging coming from the other side. So yeah, storytelling, yeah, it definitely, I don't think it can be overstated how powerful it is. I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Well, you're right. I mean, the most common reference from the prohibitionist perspective is reefer madness.
Right.
They took the messaging and put it into the medium of a popular film that was brilliant, and that ultimately helped power those 80 years of misinformation.
I guess just maybe we can pivot a little bit, and talk about sort of current trends that you're seeing right now, in the
Hmm.
space, because I know that, it is limited in terms of, what you can do and where you can market, or straight up advertise. Um, and I know I see people on like LinkedIn doing what I guess I would consider more B2B, kind of advertising in the space. Producers, I mean, processors and growers, posting things on social media. I geared more towards the wholesale space,
Hmm.
but certainly showing their brands off and talking about, their goals as a business. And but I know that's not, you can't do that everywhere. And so I'm just curious about, what you're seeing. What's the sort of newest, uh, I don't know, most effective, but maybe most popular, sort of stabs at this that people are taking, that you're seeing and thinking either, hey, that's cool and interesting, and let's push that, or, maybe we should take this take this stab on this one.
Yeah, of course. Well, when we're talking about marketing trends, you know, we're seeing a lot of stuff. At Grasslands, just to note, we do have a PR practice. We also have a marketing practice that works with leaders on their thought leadership and that helps brands with their content marketing. Um, and on that content marketing side, we really are seeing an aggressive play finally. I know I've spent much of my time in the last 3 years encouraging brands to really get out there. I keep saying that one of the best gifts that a brand can give itself now in the era of Schedule One, and regardless of scheduling, federal illegality is really focusing on your SEO. Sure, Google is not playing nice now, but if you are focused on your SEO head down for the last few years and the next few years, you will be in a great place to succeed when we do have federal legality, and those boundaries do open up within the world's largest tech companies a lot more. So I love seeing this new shine on content marketing, because that is ultimately what powers SEO through your primary website. And of course, I always tell brands your most important marketing vehicle is your website. Do not undervalue it. I mean, it's probably the reason you're doing this podcast right now, Brett. This is content marketing on behalf of the firm. Let's get out in front of our target audience and flex that thought leadership muscle a little bit. Let them know that we are passionate about this space. It's really powerful. So I love seeing that investment. And I also would caution us to be a little bit conscientious of AI and how hacky it is right now. AI is not there yet. We
I
can
was going
tell
to
when they're
ask you about
using
AI. That's funny.
we know when you're just writing 10 blogs with AI. We can tell it's,
Hmm.
we mess around with it a lot. And as a journalism minded agency, we are very clear to say that AI is not ready for this yet. It has value, very much. It has value, but writing blogs, writing columns is not the value because it's simply not there yet. But another trend we're seeing is the power of a well-timed, elevated PR tactic. So when you think about public relations, a lot of people think about, oh, I'm going to put out a news release. Great, that is public relations. That's kind of a standard PR tactic. But when we think about elevated PR tactics, we think about getting deep and getting a little bit smarter, maybe adding some surprise and delight and some formality to the mix. So that could look like a big trend report where we position clients as experts on a specific issue and then use that trend report to secure earned media coverage. And that can also look like a big PR stunt. You got to love it
Hmm.
when you wake up in the news cycle. Suddenly there's Snoop and Solo Stove everywhere because of a well timed PR stunt. Regardless how they feel about it after the fact, that
Right.
stunt very much was pretty ubiquitous for a good couple of weeks. And from that perspective, it was successful. So I love a good elevated PR tactic, and we see that happening all the time. We are working on 5 or 6 right now for clients, and a couple that we did in the last year that you might have seen. We worked with Maramed when they recreated the Boston Tea Party. So they were out there on a schooner in
Right.
colonial garb on a big anniversary of the Tea Party, throwing stuff into the Boston Harbor, and they were of course, they were protesting taxation. They were
Right.
protesting 280E. So, what a valuable PR stunt to really position that message in front of your target audience. They wanted to get that in front of regulators, they wanted to get that in front of industry. So, that's another trend. And lastly, I'll say, the LinkedIn warrior. I love the LinkedIn warriors. You know them, Brett. They're out there every day with these
Oh, yeah.
long diatribes, and some are better than others, obviously. And most of them need to get away from AI, need to wean themselves off it. But we have seen LinkedIn truly emerge as the most cannabis friendly social media channel. Bravo, LinkedIn, mad props. And and it really has proven to be one of the most valuable channels to get your word out, especially to B2B audiences, which we know in this era of federal legality, when we're dealing with this very awkward patchwork of state by state legalization, we really do need to communicate with our partners, and we can't always be together at conferences. So, LinkedIn is really an integral part of the conversation and an emerging trend in cannabis marketing.
That's funny. I don't know that anybody saw that coming in terms of LinkedIn. It's
No
like
doubt.
definitely, and yeah, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. It's part of modern business development for sure. But it was definitely not the place that I was expecting to see you know pitches for cannabis and psychedelics companies. Just it's funny the way things turn left when you think they're just going to keep going straight. Um, but we're coming up on about a half an hour here, Ricardo. It's been a real pleasure talking with you here today.
I guess the last thing I'll leave you with, Brett, is just I think this industry is truly being built on the backs of strategic partnerships, and I wanted to just thank you and your team for having me on today because we really value you guys and your partnership, your sponsorship of the Grasslands Party, your support of Grasslands, and very much look forward to showing that same support right back to you. But I think opportunities like this are just great opportunities to kind of speak out and say, encourage people to not be afraid of pursuing those deep and meaningful strategic partnerships. Because I know for my small business, we would be nowhere without them. And
Yeah.
so, thank you for your partnership, Brett, and thanks for having me on today.
Well, it's been a pleasure. And just to echo that, I've come, after, practicing law for, north of 10 years, I've realized that it really is all about relationships. Business comes down to relationships, whether they're strategic or not. Having real relationships with the people on the other side of whatever it is that you're doing, it makes a huge difference. And so, very happy to have you on. Very happy to have sort of made this connection between our firms, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime. Um, so,
Looking forward to it, man.
all right. Well, that's it for us today. Thank you all for listening. As always, you can find us at dykamapodcast.com, youtube.com/Dykema Law, or by searching A Higher Law wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, my name is Brett Gelbord, and we look forward